The courtroom fell dead silent. Maya Williams stood frozen, her cheek burning red from the officer's hand. The sound of the slap still echoed off the wooden walls like thunder. Every person in that packed courtroom stared in shock. The police officer's face showed no shame. The judge said nothing. But Maya's eyes, they burned with something dangerous. "Get her out of here," Officer Bradley barked, reaching for Maya's arm again. That's when something incredible happened. Maya didn't move. She didn't cry. She didn't even touch her stinging cheek. Instead, she looked straight at Judge Harrison and said 5 words that made everyone's heart stop. "Your Honor, I'm a federal judge." The courtroom exploded. People gasped. Lawyers dropped their papers. Even the court reporter's fingers froze over a keyboard. Judge Harrison's face went white as paper. Officer Bradley's hand was still raised in the air, shaking now. Maya reached into her purse with steady hands. She pulled out a small leather wallet. Inside was a gold badge that caught the morning light streaming through the tall windows. "Judge Maya Williams, Federal District Court, Eastern Division," she said, her voice calm as still water. "And Officer Bradley, you just made the biggest mistake of your career." The officer stumbled backward like he'd been hit by lightning. His partner grabbed his arm to keep him from falling. But Maya wasn't done. Not even close. She walked toward the judge's bench with slow, powerful steps. Each footstep echoed in the silent room, like a drum beat. Judge Harrison gripped his gavel, so tight his knuckles turned white. "What were you doing here?" Judge Harrison whispered. Maya stopped right in front of the bench. She looked up at the man who had watched her get slapped and done nothing. "I came to observe your court, Your Honor, to see how justice works in your courtroom." Her voice grew stronger with each word. "And what I saw was the worst violation of civil rights I've witnessed in 20 years on the bench." The crowd behind her was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Everyone waited to see what would happen next. Maya placed her hands on the wooden rail. Her wedding ring clicked against the wood. "Judge Harrison," she said, "you're about to learn what real justice looks like." But before she could say another word, the courtroom doors burst open with a loud bang. FBI agents flooded into the courtroom like water through a broken dam. Their black suits and serious faces made everyone's blood run cold. The lead agent held up his badge high in the air. "Nobody move. This courtroom is now under federal investigation." Judge Harrison's face turned from white to green. His hands shook so badly he dropped his gavel. It hit the floor with a loud crash that made everyone jump. Maya smiled for the first time that day. "Right on time, Agent Rodriguez." The FBI agent nodded at Maya with respect. "Judge Williams, we got your emergency call. We came as fast as we could." Officer Bradley tried to sneak toward the back door, but 2 agents blocked his path. His partner was already in handcuffs, looking like he wanted to disappear into the floor. "Wait, wait!" Judge Harrison stood up, his voice cracking like a teenager. "This is my courtroom. You can't just—" "Actually, we can," Agent Rodriguez said, pulling out a thick folder. "This court is now under investigation for civil rights violation, corruption, and abuse of power. We've been watching you for months, Harrison." The crowd gasped again. Maya walked closer to the judge's bench, her heels clicking like a countdown timer. "You see, Judge Harrison, I wasn't here by accident today," Maya said, her voice strong and clear. "The federal court received dozens of complaints about your courtroom. Stories of people being treated badly because of their skin color. Stories of unfair sentences. Stories of police officers hitting people while you watched and did nothing." Harrison's legs gave out. He fell back into his chair like a sack of potatoes. "So I came here myself, dressed like a regular person, to see the truth with my own eyes." Maya's voice got louder. "And what did I find? A racist officer who thought he could hit a black woman in your court, and a judge who was going to let him get away with it." Officer Bradley tried to speak, but his voice came out like a squeak. I didn't know. I thought she was just what?" Maya turned to face him. "Just a black woman you could hit whenever you felt like it." The officer's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. No words came out. Agent Rodriguez stepped forward. "Officer Michael Bradley, You're under arrest for assault, battery, and violation of civil rights under federal law." The handcuffs clicked onto Bradley's wrists. The sound echoed in the silent courtroom like breaking bones. But Maya wasn't finished. She turned back to Judge Harrison, who looked like he was about to throw up. "And you, Judge Harrison, watched it all happen. You sat in that chair, supposed to protect justice, and you let a police officer assault a citizen in your own courtroom." Harrison tried to stand up again, but his legs wouldn't hold him. "Judge Williams, please, I can explain." "Explain what?" "How you've been running this courtroom like your own personal kingdom. How you've been letting officers treat black people like garbage." The courtroom was so quiet you could hear people's hearts beating. Maya climbed the steps toward the judge's bench. Each step felt like thunder. Harrison pressed himself back in his chair, trying to get away from her. When she reached the top, Maya stood right next to the judge's chair. She looked down at Harrison, like a queen looking at a bug. "Get up," she said simply. "What?" "I said get up. Out of that chair. Now." Harrison's eyes went wide. "You can't make me." But before he could finish, Agent Rodriguez's voice boomed across the courtroom. "Judge Harrison, you're also under arrest." Two FBI agents marched up the steps toward Judge Harrison. Their heavy boots made the wooden floor shake like an earthquake. Harrison gripped the arms of his judge's chair, so tight his fingernails dug into the leather. "No, you can't arrest a sitting judge. I have immunity. I have rights." "Not when you break federal law," Agent Rodriguez said, pulling out silver handcuffs. "Judge Robert Harrison, you're under arrest of conspiracy to violate civil rights, obstruction of justice, and enabling assault under color of law." The crowd watched in amazement as the agents grabbed Harrison's arms and pulled him from his throne. He kicked and struggled like a little kid having a tantrum. "This is illegal. This is wrong. I'm calling the governor. I'm calling the state Supreme Court." Maya watched calmly as they dragged him away. The state Supreme Court already knows Harrison. They're the ones who asked me to investigate you. Harrison's face went from red to purple. "What?" 6 months ago, the state received so many complaints about your court that they called in federal help. I volunteered to go undercover because I grew up in this neighborhood. I want to see how you treated people who look like me. The handcuffs clicked shut around Harrison's wrists. The sound was like music to Maya's ears. "And now I know," she continued, "you've been running this court like it's 1950, letting officers beat up black folks, giving white defendants lighter sentences, denying bail to people just because they're poor." Harrison was crying now, big tears rolling down his red cheeks. "Please, Judge Williams, I made mistakes, but I'm not a bad man. I have a family. I have kids." Maya's expression didn't change. "So did every person you treated unfairly in this courtroom. So did every black mother whose son you sent to jail for crimes white kids got warnings for." The agent started dragging Harrison toward the door, but Maya held up her hand. "Wait." Everyone stopped. Harrison looked at her with desperate hope in his eyes. Maya walked to the judge's chair. The big leather throne Harrison had just been pulled from. She ran her hand over the smooth armrest where he'd been gripping so desperately. "This chair has seen a lot of injustice," she said softly. "A lot of unfair decisions. A lot of good people getting hurt because of the color of their skin." She looked out at the packed courtroom. Black families, white families, lawyers, court workers. Everyone was staring at her with wide eyes. But today that changes. Maya sat down in the judge's chair. The leather was still warm from Harrison's body, but somehow it felt like it had been waiting for her all along. She adjusted the microphone and looked out at her new courtroom. "Ladies and gentlemen, I am Judge Maya Williams of the Federal District Court. By emergency order from the State Supreme Court and the Federal Justice Department, I am taking over this courtroom effective immediately." The crowd erupted. People cheered. They clapped. Some cried tears of joy. But Maya raised her hand for quiet. She had more to say. "Officer Bradley, Judge Harrison, your reign of terror in this courtroom is over. You forgot that justice isn't about power. It's about fairness. It's about treating every person, no matter what they look like, with dignity and respect. She pointed her gavel at the crowd. From this day forward, this will be a courtroom where justice is truly blind, where the color of your skin doesn't determine how you're treated. Maya lifted her gavel high in the air. Court is now in session, and we're going to do things the right way. But just as she was about to bang the gavel, a voice from the back of the courtroom screamed, "Judge Williams, you need to see this. There's something else." A young black woman pushed through the crowd, waving a thick manila folder above her head. Her name was Keisha, and she worked as a court clerk. Her hands were shaking as she ran toward Maya's bench. "Judge Williams, I've been waiting for someone like you to come. I've been collecting evidence for 2 years." Maya leaned forward in her chair. "What kind of evidence, miss?" "Keisha Johnson, Your Honor. I'm a clerk here, and I've been watching everything. I kept copies of documents, recorded conversations, took pictures. Judge Harrison and Officer Bradley weren't working alone." The courtroom buzzed with whispers. Agent Rodriguez stepped closer to hear better. Keisha opened a folder, and papers spilled out like water from a broken dam. Court records, photographs, audio recordings, and handwritten notes scattered across the floor. They had a whole system, Judge Williams. Harrison would give black defendants higher bail amounts, and Bradley would arrest more black people on purpose. Then they split the money from the bail bonds and fines. Maya's eyes widened. This was bigger than just racism. It was organized crime. "Show me," Maya commanded. Keisha picked up a photograph and held it high. It showed Judge Harrison shaking hands with a white man in an expensive suit, exchanging an envelope full of cash. "That's Marcus Wellington, the biggest bail bondsman in the city. He paid Harrison to set high bail amounts so more people would need his services. Poor families had to pay thousands of dollars they didn't have, just to get their loved ones out of jail." The crowd gasped. Some people started crying because they recognized their own families in Keisha's story. Maya stood up from her chair, her face serious as stone. "Agent Rodriguez, we need to see all of this evidence immediately." But Keisha wasn't finished. She pulled out a small recording device. "And I have this," she said, pressing play. Judge Harrison's voice filled the courtroom through the speaker. "Make sure you arrest at least 10 black kids this month, Bradley. We need to keep our numbers up. Wellington is paying us good money for this arrangement." Officer Bradley's voice answered, "No problem, Judge. I'll find reasons to arrest them. Loitering, disturbing the peace, whatever works." Harrison's laugh was cold and mean. "Perfect. And if any of them give you trouble in court, you know what to do. A little force never hurt anyone." The recording ended in dead silence. Even the FBI agents looked shocked. Maya felt rage burning in her chest like fire, but she kept her voice calm. "How many people were affected by this scheme, Miss Johnson?" Keisha flipped through her papers with trembling fingers. "Over 300 families in the last 2 years, Your Honor. They stole almost $2 million from our community. $2 million. Taken from families who could barely afford food. Stolen from single mothers, from grandparents raising grandchildren, from people who worked 3 jobs just to pay rent." Maya looked out at the crowd and saw the faces of the victims. She saw anger, pain, and hope all mixed together in her eyes. "Agent Rodriguez," Maya said, her voice strong as thunder, "I want everyone involved in this conspiracy arrested today. The bail bondsmen, any other officers who participated, any court officials who knew and stayed quiet." "Yes, Your Honor. We'll get them all." Maya turned back to Keisha, who was still holding the folder of evidence like it was made of gold. "Miss Johnson, you are a hero. Your courage to collect this evidence and speak up will help hundreds of families get justice." Keisha smiled through her tears. "I just wanted someone to finally listen, Your Honor. I wanted someone to care." Maya picked up her gavel and looked out at the packed courtroom one more time. These people had been waiting for justice for so long. "Well, Miss Johnson, today someone is listening. Today someone cares." She raised the gavel high above her head, ready to bring it down and officially start her first day as the new judge. But suddenly, the courtroom doors exploded open again, and this time it wasn't the FBI. It was Marcus Wellington himself, and he was carrying a gun. "Nobody move." Wellington screamed, pointing his gun at Maya. His face was red and covered in sweat. His expensive suit was wrinkled like he'd been running. The crowd started to panic. People screamed and ducked under benches. Children started crying. But Maya didn't move from her chair. She looked straight at Wellington with calm, steady eyes. "Mr. Wellington," she said in a clear voice, "put the gun down. You're only making things worse for yourself." "Worse!" Wellington laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Lady, you just destroyed my entire business. You cost me millions of dollars. My life is already over." Agent Rodriguez slowly reached for his own gun, but Maya held up her hand to stop him. She had an idea. "Your life isn't over, Mr. Wellington. But if you hurt anyone in this courtroom, it will be." Wellington's gun was shaking in his hands. "You don't understand. I have kids to feed. I have bills to pay. That money you're talking about, it's not stolen. It's earned." "Earned?" Maya's voice got stronger. "You earn money by keeping innocent people in jail? You earn money by destroying families? By taking food off children's tables?" Some of the people in the courtroom started to stand up. They weren't afraid anymore. They were angry. An old black woman named Mrs. Washington stood up first. "You took my grandson's bail money, Wellington. $8,000 I saved for 10 years. He sat in jail for 3 months because of your greed." A young father named James stood up next. "My daughter missed her graduation because you and Harrison kept her locked up on fake charges." More people stood up. One by one, the victims of Wellington's scheme rose to their feet. Wellington's gun was shaking so badly now he could barely hold it. "Sit down. All of you sit down." But they didn't sit. They kept standing. Grandmothers, fathers, mothers, teenagers, all standing together. Maya stood up too. "Mr. Wellington, look around you. These are the people you hurt. These are the families you robbed. And they're not afraid of you anymore." Wellington spun in circles, pointing his gun at different people. But there were too many of them. His hands were shaking like leaves in a storm. "This isn't fair," he screamed. "Harrison promised me this would never get out. Bradley said you all were too scared to fight back." "Well, they were wrong," Maya said, stepping down from her bench. "We're not scared. And we're done letting people like you hurt our community." Agent Rodriguez saw his chance. While Wellington was distracted by the crowd, the FBI agent moved like lightning. He tackled Wellington from behind, and the gun went flying across the floor. The gun slid all the way to Maya's feet. She picked it up carefully and handed it to another FBI agent. Wellington was on the floor now, handcuffs clicking around his wrists. He was crying like a baby. "It's over, Wellington," Agent Rodriguez said. "Conspiracy, extortion, armed assault on a federal judge. You'll be lucky if you see daylight again." Maya walked back to her bench and sat down in the judge's chair. She picked up her gavel and looked out at the courtroom full of brave people who had stood up to a man with a gun. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her voice carrying across the silent room, "what you just witnessed is what real justice looks like. It's not about one person in a black robe making decisions. It's about a community standing together and saying enough is enough." She banged her gavel 3 times. Bang, bang, bang. "This court is now officially in session, and our first order of business will be returning every stolen dollar to the families it was taken from." The courtroom erupted in cheers. People hugged each other and cried tears of joy. Keisha was smiling so wide her face hurt. Maya looked down at her hands. The same hands that had been slapped by a racist police officer were now holding the gavel of justice. The same woman who had been treated like she was nothing was now the most powerful person in the room. "Officer Bradley, Judge Harrison, and Mr. Wellington," Maya announced. "You thought you could slap justice in the face and get away with it. You thought you could hurt people because of the color of their skin and nobody would stop you." She stood up one final time and looked directly at the 3 men in handcuffs. "But you forgot something important. Justice may be blind, but she's not deaf. She hears the cries of the oppressed. She feels the pain of the innocent. And when the time is right, she strikes back." Maya raised her gavel high above her head. "Court dismissed. Justice served." Bang. The sound of the gavel hitting the wooden block echoed through the courtroom like thunder. It was the sound of change, the sound of hope, the sound of community that would never again let bullies win. Maya Williams had taken more than just a judge's seat that day. She had taken back her community's faith in justice itself. And it all started with a slap that awakened a sleeping giant. What did you think of Maya's incredible story of justice and courage? Like this story if Maya's bravery inspired you. Share this with someone who needs to hear that standing up for what's right always wins in the end. Comment below. What would you have done if you were in Maya's shoes when Officer Bradley slapped her? Subscribe for more incredible true stories of ordinary people who became extraordinary heroes when it mattered most. Hit that notification bell so you never miss stories that will restore your faith in justice.